My spidey senses are tingling. Hey guys, JMRolyat here, and with Spider-Man Homecoming coming out, I do believe that since people haven't seen the origin story through this Marvel Cinematic Universe encounter with Spider-Man, I feel like maybe some people might need a refresher even though it's only been a few years. And with that in mind, and just generally since we have so many comic book adaptations put onto film and television, I feel like a lot of people might want to know some of the origins and the general basics of the superheroes as they are done in comics. That's why this is going to be called Superhero 101. It's going to be a series where I go through different heroes and give you the basics. So today we'll start with Spider-Man. I'm going to give you a class and our favorite web slinger. Let's get started. As I'm sure many of you know, when Spider-Man's not swinging around New York in his costume, he's Peter Parker, a high schooler that is very intelligent and is a kind of scientist and inventor, as well as a photographer with his free time. And he uses his powers to help him with that. Speaking of his powers, Spider-Man's known for having super strength and can lift approximately 10 tons, being 15 times more agile than the average human, having special spidey senses that allow him to detect danger and dodge it, unless he otherwise counteracts them. So it's like when you actively don't breathe almost. He has his web slingers, which he built. Some adaptations have him having organic web slingers, whereas in most comic books he just builds them and then either buys or makes his own webbing, depending. Spider-Man first appeared in August 1962, and he was different from any other hero, as most heroes that were young and high schoolers such as him or around that age would start as sidekicks and then transition into their own comics, as in the case of Robin. However, Spider-Man just was on his own. He didn't have a mentor, and that's kind of what's interesting. He's the first of his kind, and he's just this high schooler with a lot of the emotions of a high schooler, trying his best to do what he deems as best. And even then, that varies because he is a high schooler after all. A lot of Peter's motivation stems from personal guilt of him feeling responsible for the death of his Uncle Ben. When Peter doesn't stop a mugger because he doesn't feel it's his responsibility, that mugger then in turn kills Uncle Ben, and Peter then carries that guilt. And that guilt is often translated into a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And this guilt does impact the way that then Peter handles all of the people that are important in his life. He keeps his identity secret. He does not want people that he's close to be in danger. Because it doesn't always end well, as in the case of his first love interest, Gwen Stacy, who is killed by the Green Goblin. One of Peter's other love interests is Mary Jane Watson, who most people would recognize as his main love interest. They are friends, like best friends at first, and then they marry each other. The third love interest of note that Peter has is Felicia Hardy, otherwise known as Black Cat, who is a reformed cat burglar that then ends up dating Peter for a while and is even his partner for a little while. However, not everything's great for Peter because, as I mentioned earlier, he does have enemies, and he's got 3 main enemies as it turns out. The first being Dr. Octopus, a scientist that kind of symbolizes what Peter could have been had he not been raised with the set of responsibilities that he has. The second is Norman Osborn, or the Green Goblin, who is often considered to be Spider-Man's greatest enemy, as he is the first to discover Spider-Man's secret identity, being Peter Parker, and he also kills Gwen Stacy, who is Peter's girlfriend at the time. And the third and final villain is Venom, who is different from Spider-Man because he's basically his opposite. Generally, Venom is the character that Spider-Man is shown as not being able to beat without Spider-Man taking advantage of Venom's weaknesses, as Venom is basically Spider-Man, but stronger and faster and better. So a segment that I thought would be fun for Superhero 101 is frequently asked questions, which is where I go on Google and I type in different phrases with the superhero's name in it, and take some of my favorite picks of those questions that Google autofills. And then I answer them, or don't, depending on how the question is worded, or if the question's even a question that needs to be asked. The first question is, does Spider-Man kill? And generally the answer to that is no. However, there have been cases where Spider-Man has killed, and generally he feels a great deal of guilt when he does, as Spider-Man's a hero, and heroes generally don't actively kill the people that they're going after. One, because it's not very heroic of them, and two, because how are you going to sell more comics if you keep killing off your villains? The second is, does Spider-Man age? And while it seems funny that, yes, he's a character that's perpetually kind of a high schooler, right? He does age. Of course, every once in a while they reset Spider-Man because it wouldn't be fun if Spider-Man was super old. But yes, Spider-Man does age. He, in the comics originally, he goes to high school and then eventually goes to college, and then eventually he graduates from college with like a Bachelor of Science or something like that. So generally, he does age. Of course, they reset it, and depending on the story, they might, move it around a bit. But yes, the other one that I thought almost was a bit ridiculous is, does Spider-Man have a cape? And I felt like that one was generally all you'd have to do is look up a picture of Spider-Man to find out the answer to that. And no, he doesn't have a cape because it wouldn't be practical for him to have a cape. It wouldn't work out very well if he did. And I think that generally in his design, capes are kind of left for people that fly, and Spider-Man doesn't fly. As well as the fact that he does a lot of quick movements and he's very agile, and the cape would just get in the way. And the final question that I found was, what does Spider-Man eat? And the general answer is whatever normal people eat. Like in the comics, he just eats normal things. He doesn't do anything like eat weird stuff. But of course, in the research of this, I did come across a Nerdist article where they talked about it, and they said that that he would just have to eat a ridiculous amount of eggs. Like in the scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 where he's trying to save Gwen and the amount of webbing that he uses there, he would have had to have eaten about 900 eggs for breakfast. So if you want to ask questions like that, you're not going to get very realistic answers, but I would just go with Spider-Man eats normal stuff. Maybe high protein calorie bars, stuff like that. Well, that's all I have for you. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to tell me what superhero you think I should do next, because I would like this to be an ongoing series. With that being said, I'm your friendly neighborhood JMRolyat. I'll see you next time.
Doesn't. Which, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense either, because that's a lot of people to have in one house. But I don't know, it seems less